Millionaire Saw Black made with a broken hand in his mansion. What he discovered made him stunned. The air inside the mansion felt heavy that afternoon, though no one dared to say it aloud. Sunlight streamed in through the tall glass windows, bouncing off polished wood floors and glittering on the chandelier above. Everything about the room shouted wealth and power. The expensive rug, the golden lamp, the perfectly arranged furniture. Yet amidst all the perfection, something was disturbingly out of place. The young black maid standing in the center of the room, her arm wrapped tightly in bandages. Her name was Clara. She wore the standard navy blue maid's dress with a crisp white apron and cap, but it was her arm that caught everyone's attention. A thick wrap stretched from wrist to elbow, stiff and swollen underneath. The skin of her hand trembled each time she shifted the silver tray she carried. On it sat plates of food meticulously arranged, yet the tray tilted dangerously because Clara could hardly hold it. Still she stood tall, her eyes fixed forward, refusing to let anyone see the pain that etched itself across her face. The millionaire of the house, Richard Hale, sat silently in his armchair. His gray shirt was neatly pressed, his shoes polished. He had built his fortune with steel and persistence, the kind of man who missed nothing in a deal. But in his own home, he had grown accustomed to looking past the servants as if they were invisible. That day, however, he couldn't. Not with Clara. Something in her stiffness, the quiet grit of her jaw, forced him to see her as more than just part of the background. Standing a few feet away was his wife Margaret. Dressed in a striking red suit, she radiated authority and coldness. Arms crossed, lips tight, she watched Clara with a look not of concern, but of irritation, as though Clara's broken arm were nothing but an inconvenience to the day's order. Margaret's voice cut through the silence, sharp and impatient. "Clara, keep it steady. If you drop that tray, you'll regret it." Clara swallowed hard but said nothing. She had learned long ago that words could do more damage than silence. The other staff members, 2 younger maids and a pair of male servers in aprons, stood behind Margaret. Their faces told the truth. Their lips could not. Wide eyes of shock, sympathy, and fear. They all knew what had happened to Clara's hand, but no one dared to say it in front of the mistress. Richard leaned forward slightly in his chair, frowning. What happened to her arm? His question sounded almost casual, but his eyes stayed fixed on the bandages. The room stiffened. Margaret was the first to answer, her tone clipped. She slipped while carrying a basket of linens. Clumsy as usual, she waved her hand dismissively as though the matter were too small for discussion. But Richard's gaze didn't leave Clara. He noticed how her face flinched when she shifted the tray, how her fingers curled oddly, as though the bones inside were not set properly. No simple slip could cause that level of injury. Something wasn't right. Clara's mind replayed the moment her arm broke. She had been rushing the previous week, balancing 2 trays at once, when Margaret, furious over a misplaced vase, grabbed her by the arm to yank her out of the room. The force sent her crashing against the marble counter. The crack was sharp, searing pain exploding through her bones. Clara had cried out, but Margaret's only response had been a warning glare. No doctors, no hospital, just bandages from the head maid and an order to keep working. Now here she was serving food as though nothing had happened, her arms screaming with every movement. Richard's chest tightened as he watched her. He wasn't a soft man. Years of business had hardened him against pity, but something about this sight unsettled him deeply. Why hadn't he noticed before? Why had no one told him? And why did the staff look too frightened to speak? Margaret, sensing his silence, stepped closer to him. "Don't concern yourself with it, Richard. She's being paid to work. Broken arm or not, the house must run smoothly." Her voice carried the finality of command, as if the matter was settled. But for the first time in years, Richard didn't obey his wife's tone. His eyes moved from Clara's trembling hand to the staff frozen behind Margaret. Their expressions, shock, pity, helplessness, spoke louder than words. They had all seen the truth. They had all watched Clara endure, and they had all stayed silent. The air thickened. Clara, clutching the tray, felt sweat bead on her forehead. Her body begged her to drop it, to scream, to finally tell the truth. But fear sealed her lips shut. She could not risk her job, her only income, her only means to care for her younger siblings at home. So she held on, knuckles white, eyes lowered, praying for strength. Richard rose slowly from his chair. The tension in the room tightened like a rope. Every step he took toward Clara felt heavy with unspoken judgment. The staff held their breath. Margaret's face stiffened, her jaw tightening, and Clara, she fought back tears, unsure if this moment would bring her relief or ruin. For the first time, the millionaire saw the maid not as a shadow in his mansion, but as a woman standing in agony, forced into silence, holding the weight of far more than a tray, and something inside him shifted, a realization creeping in that what he had ignored might cost more than he was willing to bear. Richard stood in front of Clara, the faint clatter of the tray shaking in her hands, echoing louder than the silence in the room. He had spent decades closing deals worth millions, staring down rivals across mahogany tables. Yet somehow he had never felt this kind of pressure, the pressure of seeing injustice inside his own home. "Clara," he said quietly, his deep voice drawing every pair of eyes in the room. "Put the tray down." Clara froze. No one had ever heard the master of the house speak her name like that. Gentle, deliberate, almost protective. She hesitated, her knuckles wide around the tray's edge. Margaret scoffed. "She doesn't need your pity, Richard. She knows her place. Clara, do as you're told and serve." The authority in Margaret's tone cut like glass. Clara's knees wobbled, but Richard reached out and carefully took the tray from her hands himself, setting it down on the coffee table. The plates rattled against each other. A small sigh of relief escaped Clara's lips before she quickly pressed them shut, afraid even that sound might be punished. Richard turned to face his wife. His voice was sharper now. What really happened to her arm? Margaret's eyes narrowed, her painted lips twitching with irritation. "I told you she slipped. These girls are careless." "No," Richard interrupted, his tone firm, almost foreign to the others who'd known him as a man of measured calm. "I've managed factories, steel mills, construction yards. I know what a broken arm looks like, and I know what fear looks like, too." His eyes swept across the staff. None of them dared to speak, but their lowered gazes confirmed what he already suspected. Margaret's face flushed red. "You're accusing me in front of servants?" She hissed the last word like venom, but Richard didn't flinch. His attention shifted back to Clara. "Tell me the truth, please." Clara's heart pounded. She wanted to. God, she wanted to. The memory of the crack in her bone, the searing pain, the silence forced on her. It clawed at her throat. But then she glanced at Margaret, whose glare carried an unspoken threat. Clara's lips trembled. For a moment, silence seemed safer, and then one of the younger maids, unable to bear it any longer, whispered, "It wasn't her fault." Her voice cracked with fear, but the words broke the dam. Another servant added quickly, "She was pushed." The two men in aprons shifted uneasily, but their faces confirmed the same truth. The room felt as if it collapsed inward. Richard's jaw tightened as he turned back to his wife. "You pushed her. You broke her arm and forced her to keep working." His voice thundered, a rare loss of composure. Margaret straightened, her pride unyielding. "I disciplined her. That's what you pay me to oversee, discipline. If she can't handle the work, she doesn't belong here." Richard's hands clenched at his sides. For years, he had ignored Margaret's coldness, excusing it as efficiency, allowing her to run the house while he chased business. But now, staring at Clara's bandaged arm and the raw fear in the staff's eyes, he realized what his silence had enabled. He turned back to Clara. "You should never have been treated this way. Not in my house." His tone softened but carried weight. The kind of weight that could shift lives. "From this day on, you answer to me, not her." Margaret gasped, stunned at his defiance. "You can't mean that. You'll tear this household apart for a maid." Richard's eyes blazed. "For a human being." The words hung heavy in the room. For Clara, it felt like air rushing into lungs that had been starved too long. Her knees weakened, but she steadied herself, not wanting pity, just recognition. Richard turned to his staff. "All of you, if you are ever mistreated, you come to me. No more silence." The other servants exchanged wide-eyed glances, a mix of shock and relief spreading across their faces. Margaret's lips curled. "You'll regret undermining me. These people will take advantage of you." Richard shook his head. "What I regret is not seeing sooner. My wealth, this mansion, this life, it means nothing if I can't protect the people who keep it standing." He paused, his voice trembling slightly. "I see her now, and I can't unsee it." Clara's throat tightened, tears threatening, but held back with dignity. For the first time in years, she felt more than invisible. She felt seen, not as a servant, not as an object to discipline, but as Clara, a woman, a human, someone who mattered. Richard gave a final order. "Clara, you're not working another day until you've seen a doctor. I'll cover everything." The tray of food, forgotten on the table, sat as a quiet symbol of the moment. The weight Clara had carried in silence was finally lifted. Margaret stormed out, her heels echoing like cracks on marble, but no one followed. The servants stood straighter, and Clara, she took a deep, shaky breath. It wasn't freedom, not yet. But it was the beginning. And for the first time since her arm had broken, she felt something she thought had long been lost inside those mansion walls. Hope. If you enjoyed this story, don't forget to give it a thumbs up and hit that subscribe button for more emotional, dramatic, and unexpected tales. And let us know in the comments, where in the world are you watching from? We love hearing from all of you. Until next time, stay kind, stay curious, and keep watching.